We just recently wrapped up a series in October, November, December. It was on relationships, and it was so well received. And what was interesting to me is that a lot of other topics kind of came up in the midst of looking at abandonment, self-betrayal, and being alone, and so on. And one of the things I was looking at was these parallels between intimate relationships, what we call intimate relationships, and student-teacher relationships. And my question was, is there a difference? Well, obviously there's a difference between a committed relationship and an open relationship when it comes to student-teacher. And then what spurred that even further was I was overhearing a conversation with a couple people, and one of them was talking about these profound experiences they had with this particular teacher, just really just life-changing. And it wasn't just one, it was many experiences. And I was just in awe listening to this story. And then a couple minutes later, this person said, oh, so-and-so is coming to town. It was a different teacher. I'm going to go see that person.
Oh, it's a very tricky thing. I think it's a kind of promiscuity that happens because you get a taste of really an intimacy with yourself that a particular teacher is supporting. And if it's not a deep enough taste for you, then I recommend that you actually check out other teachers and find somebody that supports you so fully in surrendering to yourself, because what must happen is your own internal denial of that surrender and your internal turning away from yourself. And if you're in a committed relationship with a teacher, you will go through some hellish moments, but you won't escape. And in that non-escaping, you will discover yourself more deeply. So what I've seen in our culture, in our subculture, is that there are some incredible teachers around, and they're available. And so we have a smorgasbord of teachings and teachers, and so we take a bite of this, we take a bite of that, we take a bite of this. And that is good at a beginning stage to find out what really resonates with you. But with maturity and with a recognition, perhaps, if you are doing that, then there comes a time for a commitment. And I can only speak from my experience, of course, that I had many teachers before I had Papaji as a smorgasbord. And it may be a couple of years I would stay with them, or teachings like the Tibetan Buddhism and Zen Buddhism and New Age kind of teachings. And I benefited from every one of them. And yet something was still calling out. And from that something, I actually prayed for a teacher, and I ended up at Papaji's doorstep. And there was a recognition, I stop here. And in that, that's already surrender. It didn't mean that I didn't feel, I got to get out of here at certain times, or, he doesn't love me, or, what does this mean? I mean, there's room for all of that to come up, like in any relationship. But I knew I wasn't moving, because that was the teaching, to stop. It is the teaching, stop. So I committed to that, and I can just say from my own experience that that commitment revealed itself to be a commitment to love and to truth, not necessarily to pleasure, not necessarily to new truth. I'll just tell a brief thing. I had come back from Papaji. I was having meetings around, and it was the second wave of that. I was actually in Maui, and somebody came up to speak and started telling me about this fantastic teacher in India who could confer immortality on you. And she could tell I wasn't interested, and she said, I'm so shocked, Gangaji. You used to be so open. I thought you would be open to this. And I really just had to say, in my heart of hearts, I am not looking for anything else. I'm not even looking for immortality. I'm happy if this teacher serves you, but if you're telling me so that I will go join up, it's just not there. And I realized when I was telling her that that is the teaching that Papaji offered, and that I'm extending to people, to stop right where you are, to stop your search. Now, you shouldn't stop your search until you've had a taste of what is here. But once you've had a taste, if you stop, then you're consumed by that taste. And that's intimacy, and that's commitment.
Well, so many people I've heard describe these amazing moments of stopping with you. And then if there is an inclination of like, oh, I'm going to go see so-and-so, or I'm going to watch this YouTube, if that impulse is there, I wonder if there's just a doubt in the original stopping that just starts to arise.
Maybe.
I mean, that takes a very specific kind of inquiry to tell the truth about that, because it's quite easy, and sometimes it can be true, to go, no, I'm just really drawn by this particular person, or it like came up on my Facebook feed or whatever.
You can't make the judgment for anybody else, but you can tell the truth for yourself. That's why I share that story with myself. I went to multiple teachers until I found my true teacher. And I also had many relationships until I found my true relationship. So it's something only you can know for yourself, but it's also the willingness to tell the truth to yourself. Are you escaping something, or are you in fact really being augmented by different voices? And maybe you're not into a committed relationship with a teacher. Maybe that's not for everybody. I know for myself it was necessary, but that doesn't mean it's necessary for everyone. Maybe you don't need a teacher at all. And there's no formula for it. But if there's some mysterious force that draws you to someone, a teacher, a lover, a mate, a friend, to be true to that and to go all the way with that. That's really the thing. And if skirting off to other relationships, other lovers, other teachers is a way of avoiding going all the way, then tell the truth. And then you have the choice to stop. Something gets generated when you find your teacher, whether it's a mountain or a person or living or dead. Something gets generated that is a threat to the construction, a threat to the fabricated, built identity. And we find reasons why, well, this is not my teacher anymore. Oh, well, I thought you were all powerful. I see you really are just a human being, so you couldn't be my teacher. And in truth, I'm not your teacher. We are all at the feet of the Satguru. And we all play different roles for each other in that.
There's another section later on in that clip that struck me as part of this terror is the surrender to the teacher you were talking about is you're not really surrendering to the teacher, you're surrendering your concept of yourself, letting that go, and letting that go can be terrifying.
Yes, let's say it is terrifying, because we know that in relationships like that, where the power seems to be imbalanced and the teacher has the power and you don't, there's often been abuse, misuse. I mean, that's what cults are about, and brainwashing. And so it's very intelligent to recognize what is meant by surrender to the teacher. And then you're aware of the person in front of you who's playing the role of teacher and what that person wants. Because if the so-called teacher wants your personality to disappear, or wants all your funds to go to them, then it's intelligent to be alerted and to back off. So I support that questioning. What I think we're getting at here is that there is that questioning that's legitimate and stepping back that's legitimate. And then there's something that the mechanism of just staying away that's not legitimate in terms of self-discovery, that there is a moment, like with a lover, where you just let go, where you really go all the way. And that's what's meant by surrender. And then if the next morning or the next day when you're not in a state of bliss or you feel very unenlightened, or you look at your lover and you go, who is this? I don't know if I like this person. That you still stay. You don't run out the door. You don't bolt. And our tendency is to bolt and then go find another teacher or lover. That's why I use the word promiscuity with it, because we understand that we are not bound by the rules, by monogamy, or by the need to stay with one teacher. This is a different age. There are plenty of teachers. But we sell ourselves short when we don't go all the way. And so that's the point. And then, yes, there really is no formula. Yes, maybe you go see lots of people, but your heart, your commitment, and that commitment is really the test of when things get bad with you, when old habits arise with you, when the self-doubt comes in, when the madness, the latent madness comes back. Then if you are actually committed to support, you don't move. You can face anything. And that's the way I understand teacher. Or for me, it was guru, my guru. And so since he was Indian, that meant a lot in India. I mean, we did bend down and kiss his feet, and whatever he wanted, he could have. But it was all really based on recognizing that he was not just an ordinary relationship in our lives that we would play with trivially, and we would come and we would go. He was something very special. And in that, we honored him. And when you honor somebody, you pay close attention. That's respect. And then that respect is bounced back to you. So you have true self-respect. And then you are free. And you can, in that freedom, you can smell a cult. You can see what's happening because you aren't looking to be saved. You're looking to be who you are.
And I think that when you're with a teacher long enough, that's in your system. It's not like the teacher has to be there, or even that you have to I'm gonna watch a Gangaji YouTube right now or listen to an episode of the radio show. It's like, oh, that's in me.
That's right. It's not separate from you.
Right.
Yes, that's the meeting. That's why I use the terms of love or commitment and the tendency to promiscuity, because there is a meeting where you really recognize it's oneself, and it's in this experience split into something called me and you. But it's oneself, discovering itself. And that's the teaching and the teacher. And in that, we're all students.
I wonder if we could look at the other side of that, there's the thing of skirting around a true commitment. And then there's I know maybe I beat this to death in the 3 shows that we did on relationships, but in this particular instance, I think it's really important to look at the subject of dependency. Because certainly many of us that we even got on a spiritual path because we've been walking around wounded in some way and trying different ways of resolving that. So dependency, in a way, is natural.
This issue of dependency, I think, is really important because in many ways we are dependent on the teacher, because the teacher knows something we don't know, and we want it. We feel it, and the only way to get it is to depend on the teacher to give it to you. That's not finally true, of course, but that's experience, because you recognize, I want this, and I don't have it, or I don't know how to access it, or I don't know where it is, or it doesn't last, however we experience it. And we recognize that in the presence of a teacher of any form, that's reinforced, that we discover, oh, it's right here, and so I'd say there's nothing wrong with dependency. It's only when the dependency becomes some kind of neurotic game, which is we are back to cults, and we're back to to relationships that don't serve awakening, relationships, student-teacher, that don't serve either the student or the teacher, that they have to do with some kind of playing out the normal relationships in life. And really, a teacher is not a normal relationship. It's, we have parents, but we need to individuate away from our parents. And with a teacher, it's an absorption. It's actually going a different direction from my parents. We're going into. And in a true teacher, there are no strings to that. There's no way nothing you have to pay back to that. It's offered freely. Ramana is the great example of that. Papaji. You can be who you are. You can live the life you're living. Nothing has to change, but this surrender to being absorbed and to absorbing. And so, I know we do this occasionally, is turn around the meaning of words, but I think we're very afraid of dependence. I know when I was with Papaji, I had an attack of fear of dependence, and I didn't know him. I'd only been with him a couple of weeks, and I thought, well, how do I know what kind of person he is? Maybe he's one of these gurus. This is going to be a brainwashing thing. And all of my doubts started coming up, and there was a moment where I had to just take a breath and recognize that, am I going to trust my experience here, or am I going to trust all of these doubts about what could happen? And I knew in that moment that I was surrendering, and I knew it could be a mistake, that he could have been somebody who was untrustworthy. But that's part of the adventure of life. There are no guarantees that it's going to work normally and easily. And so I chose to trust my experience of him, and I'm thrilled for that. But I also knew in that moment that trusting my experience, I could have ended up in hell. So I was also trusting something that was deeper than experience, that if I ended up in hell, I could deal with that too. That I didn't have to protect myself, because it's this sense of, it's really a false independence of protecting ourselves from any harm or anything we don't understand or anything that may not be what we think we should get, that keeps us away from this surrender into dependence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think my follow-up question to that would be, if you're talking about a true teacher, is there such a thing as too much devotion?
Well, depends on what you mean by devotion. If it's pure, devotion is just love, and it's being yourself. If it's an imitation of that, you're still trying to extract something from somebody. And if there's too much of that, you just end up with your head in the sand.